comes to boost pedals, there's often a lot of confusion about the different types of boosts that are out there. Transparent boosts, treble boosters, or boosts that are designed to offer maybe some color and some EQ shaping. But it's also very confusing to understand exactly where boosts should go relative to your other pedals. So today's episode is all about boosts, the different types of boosts that are out there, and I'll show you a couple of different versions of each type, and where you should put them in your signal path for your desired result. Now, there isn't a one-size-fits-all answer for this. It really is going to depend upon your ears and your tastes. But I'm going to give you sound examples of all the different locations that you might be able to use some of these boosts and how that impacts the overall sound. So for today's demonstration, we got a couple of things going. I have my Fender Stratocaster, I have my Pedalboard, and I have a Soldano SLO set to the crunch setting, which is just a variation of the clean sound, which just gives you a little bit more maybe on the edge of breakup sort of sound. I really feel like that matches up a little bit better with low output pickups like I have in this Strat. The other thing to name is we're going to be using two pedals only on the Pedalboard. One is the collider, which is wired in for wet dry. So it's happening after the line level output of the Soldano SLO. So that's all happening after everything else. As far as the overdrives, we're going to be using just a TS Mini, the Tube Screamer Mini from Ibanez, a very inexpensive overdrive that represents the classic Ibanez Tube Screamer. We're then going to be pairing boosts with it, either before the overdrive, where I'm going to just be plugging in the boost before it goes into the Pedalboard, or after the overdrive. And I have an insert point in the Pedalboard that's after the overdrive section so that I could put a boost pedal there so you can hear the overdrive with the boost before it, or the overdrive with the boost pedal after it. Also, as I'm going through, I'll play a clean reference sound so you understand what the sound is of the guitar without any boost involved, and then you'll hear the boost added, and then the boost plus the overdrive in the two different positions with boost pre and boost post overdrive. So now that we understand how the signal path is going to work, and I'll indicate it with diagrams as we go along, let's now get into the different types of boost pedals that are out there. So the first and perhaps the most elusive style of boost out there is what's called the transparent boost. And the way that I categorize a transparent boost is it doesn't have any remarkable character or color other than just representing exactly what's coming into it. In other words, whatever the guitar brings into it is what's going to be pushed out of it, and obviously just louder as you increase the boost knob or the volume knob that's on the boost. And two great examples of a transparent boost that I can think of are, firstly, the Keeley Katana, of course, famously used by John Mayer, and secondly, the Vertex boost, which is also, again, a very transparent boost used by tons of session musicians all over the world and many touring professionals as well. Now, both of these offer great transparent boosting, and you're going to get to hear what these do both before overdrive and after overdrive. And aside from maybe the slight difference in terms of maybe some of the color that they offer, really the only big difference between them is the Vertex boost has an expression output where you can put any external volume or expression pedal and connect that to the boost and use that as a way to express the boosted volume when the boost is on. And then when the boost is off, it returns to a normal volume pedal, but removes all the tone suck because it's in essence an expression for the boost and is connected through the boost, not in series with the boost as you would normally do with most passive or active volume pedals. So for this first clip, we're going to hear the Vertex boost. It's going to be guitar into the boost that's running into the Pedalboard that's running into the front of the amp. I'm going to play it clean first without the boost involved, and then I'm going to bring in the boost so you can hear what it adds. Okay, so we heard that. Now let's go ahead and add in the overdrive. So it's going to go boost into the Mini Tube Screamer overdrive, and then that's going to go in front of the amp. So you're going to get to hear how the boost is overdriving the Tube Screamer. Again, hitting the Tube Screamer harder, and doing it in this fashion is going to add more saturation to the Tube Screamer. It's not going to be adding so much volume to the Tube Screamer. So let's hear how that sounds, and then I'll swap it and I'll move the boost after the TS9, and then you're going to get to hear that comparatively. And I'll kind of try to stick with roughly the same lick that you just heard for the clean and then boosted example just before this. Let's check it out. So that was the Vertex boost. You got to hear the clean reference without the boost. You got to hear the boost by itself, and then you got to hear the boost before a tube screamer and after a tube screamer. Again, the same settings on everything that we did here. We didn't change the tube screamer settings. We didn't change the boost settings. It was set right at 12 noon, so we're getting about 8 dB of boost at that point, and everything else remained the same. Now let's bring in the Katana, our other transparent boost option. I'm also going to set it right at kind of the middle of the total amount of boost that's available on it, just putting it right at 12 noon, and it's on the side, so it's a little bit hard to see, but we're gonna have that knob pointing straight up, and I'm gonna do the same exact sequence as we did before. So first, I'm gonna play a little clean reference. I'm gonna bring in the Katana so you can hear what that boost adds, and then we'll move on to hearing that boost before overdrive and then after overdrive. Let's check it out. All right, so there it was, on and off in front of the amplifier, no overdrive involved yet. Let's now bring in that TS9 and let's hear the Katana before it and after it. And again, all settings are the same. What you heard in the first demo in terms of the amount of boost is going to stay exactly the same whether it's running pre or post the tube screamer for the overdrive. Let's do it. So those were two examples of transparent overdrives. Just to kind of synthesize what I'm hearing, when you put either of these in front of an overdrive, whether it be a tube screamer or anything else, it is saturating it harder. And if you want to get more gain and saturation out of whatever the overdrive is, whether it's a tube screamer or a blues breaker style pedal or whatever it is going to saturate more. Now there's some pedals that might take to that better than others. I think the tube screamer tends to act fairly good with anything driving it, although it does tend to compress a bit more and maybe loses a little bit of the articulation. When you use a transparent boost after an overdrive, it tends to just increase the volume and not really change the character of the overdrive. And frankly, with transparent boosts, I think that they do the very best job if you're using them after an overdrive, because it can take whatever the core sound of that overdrive is and make it louder for a solo or make you just poke out a little bit more in a band mix. And I think that that's the best application if you're talking about transparent overdrives and where to put them. The only condition where I would see putting them before a pedal and making it saturate more is if that pedal was particularly sensitive to any sort of EQ and you didn't want there to be any EQ affecting it and you just wanted pure volume hitting it, then I could see choosing something like a Katana or a Vertex boost in that particular context just to drive that pedal harder but not add much color. But again, it is going to saturate it harder. So I think the best place to put a transparent boost is almost always going to be after your overdrives. Now let's talk about a different style of boosts, which are kind of more of what I consider to be the colorful boosts. These are boosts that inherently add a color to whatever it is that they're hitting. Now this could be to add extra saturation by design, this could be to change the EQ characteristics, or maybe to add some sort of compression, to maybe get a different feel from the guitar that's just going to be consistent as it goes through all the subsequent pedals in the overdrive chain and beyond. Now there's a couple of different examples of pedals that I have here today that I think are really indicative of what kind of a colorful boost might be. The first one is the classic RC Booster by Exotic Effects, and it's been out for almost 20 years at this point. And it's really a classic not only because it offers some great EQ options to be able to dial in your treble and your bass, but it also has a volume and a gain knob so you can get some saturation from it and some compression from it and really just get a beautiful feel going into any other pedal that you're following with it. Also what I have is the Love Pedal Chula, which is based on the COT 50, and that's a really classic boost pedal that Love Pedal had released, again, almost 20 years ago, and it was a really, really famous device that was used by a lot of great players like Michael Landau and Josh Smith, and in fact, Josh Smith still uses the Chula today, which is basically a two-channel version of a Chula. It doesn't have any controls whatsoever, except for a level knob on the second channel of the boost. We're just going to stay with the first channel today. We're not going to cascade the two boosts together because it'll become more of an overdrive at that point. So we're going to do the same exact test that we did with the transparent boosts. We're going to have the guitar go into what I'm calling those colorful boosts. You're going to get to hear it on and off. and then you're going to get to hear how they sound before the Tube Screamer overdrive and then after the Tube Screamer overdrive. So let's start first with the Love Pedal Chula. Again, there's no controls on this thing. It's just one foot switch in the truth. You don't even have a knob to control unless you're using that second channel, which you're not going to use today. I'm going to run just the guitar clean into the amp, so you just kind of have a reference again for the clean tone. And then I'm going to bring in that Chula so you can hear what that's adding to the sound. Sounded great. Chula, again, is a wonderful pedal, and certainly the pedigree of guys like Josh Smith. It has to be a wonderful pedal for guys like that to continue to use it year after year. Now let's hear it before the Tube Screamer and after the Tube Screamer, and let's see what it does. I'm going to, again, try to play the same style lick that I had played for the clean and then boosted example just before this, so we can kind of keep it roughly as consistent as possible for listening purposes. Let's check it out. So that was the Chula. It sounded great before, and I actually thought it sounded pretty good after too, but I think I can already start to see that there may be some benefits to using a pedal like this, especially if it's kind of more of an always-on device like it is for many players like Josh Smith, definitely to keeping it early in the chain and having all the other overdrives kind of get fed into by the Chula. Now let's check out another one and see how this holds true with the RC booster as we talked about earlier. And for this purpose, I'm just going to set all the knobs straight up at noon. So I'm going to put the gain at noon, the volume at noon, and the treble and the bass straight up. So I'm not going to be adding a bunch of color to this, but I'm going to just see kind of what's inherent in what's going on there and seeing what that adds to the overall tone. So again, I'm going to try the Strat into that clean, turn the boost on and off so we can hear what that's adding to the clean tone, and then we'll move into hearing it before and after the Tube Screamer as our overdrive. So let's start with the clean and then boosted sound with no overdrive. Let's check that out. Sounds good, great sounding pedal. Again, a classic for a reason. Now let's go into hearing it before the Tube Screamer, and then I'll switch to put in after the Tube Screamer. Again, same settings on the RC, and let's see how that sounds. The RC is adding definitely some compression to the overall sound, and it's a nice compression. It actually, I think, behaved maybe a little more neutrally than the Chula did, but still had very much a color comparatively to the transparent boost that we tried a little earlier in the Katana and the Vertex boost. Certainly having those EQs on tap on the RC is a really valuable thing if you're trying to maybe breathe a little bit more life into your guitar, or maybe just kind of want to have a little bit grittier sound that's going to be going into all of your overdrive and distortion pedals, I would definitely say here that the boosts that have more color, whether it's an RC booster or an EP booster, some sort of Echoplex style preamp, even though in name those are designed to come later in the chain, I actually think things like that and the Chula sound better earlier in the chain as sort of always-on effects, or just to add a little bit more gain to what's already going on. They really make everything bloom a little bit better and just seem to add a fatness because of that color and that saturation and sort of the lack of linearity that they have compared to those transparent boosts. It just does something to the overall tone that I think was very pleasing, especially with this setup. But I can tell you, having tried this many times throughout hundreds of pedalboard builds, that this tends to hold true in most circumstances. So I would highly recommend, just based on what we've heard up to this point, the transparent boosts really do best later in the chain, after your overdrive and distortion pedals. Those are adding volume, right? Fully transparent, no color. But the things that are adding color, that do a really good job of doing that, like the more colorful boosts, those do best before your overdrive and distortion section to kind of drive them a little harder if that's something that's desirable to you. Now there's a third type of boost pedal that is often overlooked in this conversation, and of course these are just a small snippet of all the different types of boosts that are out there, and certainly these pedals that we've used today, although they may be representative of a lot of other style of boosts, we didn't try every single boost out there in the video. But this last one is something that I think is not getting its credit and its due, although in its day, it was by far one of the most popular, in fact, the only boost that was really out there when we're talking about 60s and 70s rock music. It's none other than the treble booster. Now, this was something that was used by people like Jeff Beck and Eric Clapton and Brian May, and it was a way that they could get a little bit more gain and saturation out of a fairly clean amp, like a Marshall Plexi style amplifier, which actually, people don't realize, didn't really have that much gain. When you were running into those straight in and you weren't doing, a Van Halen kind of cascading Marshall with a Variac thing, Marshalls are fairly clean amps, especially at 100 watts. So you needed a way to kind of get them to break up a little bit more, and the treble booster was a way to do that. Now, there was some serious drawbacks to using treble boosters because unlike the transparent boosts that you heard here that are all op-amp and IC based, or some of the more colorful boosts, and those are kind of a mixture of different styles, but are somewhat less impedance sensitive than a treble booster. The treble booster is like a fuzz in that it will hate to see anything except a direct guitar straight into it, and anything else will compromise that tone greatly. So although I'm going to show it to you both before overdrive, where it's just straight off the guitar, and after overdrive, after it's been buffered, you can hear it both ways, but I think that most of us will agree that the best way to use it to get the optimal tone is going to be first. Now, I don't have an original treble booster with me, but I do have a BSM version, and these guys specialize in making high-end replicas one-to-one of original treble boosters. So I'm going to be using that today as my pedal, as the exemplar of what a treble booster might sound like. Of course, there are other versions that are out there, but if they're designed to sound like a vintage treble booster, this is going to be a good substitute for what the original might have been. So what we're going to do is we're going to have guitar go straight in. You're going to hear it clean. Then I'm going to bring in that treble booster, and you're going to hear that it actually offers quite a bit of gain for a boost and quite a bit of distortion to the overall tone. And then we'll go into the overdrive examples where it's pushing an overdrive and then after an overdrive in just a minute. So first, let's try it clean and then boosted straight into the amp. Let's check it out. So definitely this had the most kind of gain and treble characteristics of any of the boosts that we play. Now the Chula did have a little more kind of upper mids and a little more trebly response, but this was definitely by far greater than that and had a little bit more kind of raspiness in the gain. Now, this is ideally the place where you're going to want to use this without question just because of the impedance sensitivity of a treble booster. But let's hear it now paired with an overdrive, and I'm going to use it first with the treble booster feeding the overdrive, and this would be the ideal way to run it. And then I'm going to run it after the overdrive, which is the less ideal format, where it's going to be having a low impedance signal hitting the front of it. And again, because of the high impedance nature of the pedal, it's not going to react as well when you're doing it that way, but I'll let you hear it in both fashions. So let's check it out. So overall, I think with treble boosters, what we can say is maybe you like the sound of them after overdrive pedal being driven by low impedance. Of course, it's going to sacrifice some in terms of how it cleans up and sort of the interactivity that the guitar has with those germanium transistors that are inside of it. But for the most part, people will want to put these right up front, have their guitar hitting them almost immediately. If you have other impedance-sensitive devices like fuzzes and maybe vintage wahs and things of that nature, you may have to kind of figure out what combination might work best for you if those are all impedance-sensitive and all kind of want to see the guitar first. Generally, people didn't stack these together, so it may not be such a problem. But there's guys like Analog Man that actually put a fuzz face and a treble booster in the same box with the Sun Lion. So there is some precedent of people maybe using these together or at least combining them under one roof in the example from Analog Man. But I would say overall, treble boosters definitely want to go first. But looking big picture here, I think we saw a lot of great examples of the three major categories of boost: the transparent boost with the Vertex boost and Katana, more of the colorful boost with the RC booster and Chula, and then the treble booster using the BSM version that I have here. Now, of course, there are innumerable other boost pedals that could have fit this bill, but I think that these are the broad stroke categories, and I think the advice they gave you about placement is pretty much going to hold true across the board on these. But even with that said, I do recommend that you do your own research. Ultimately, your ears may not be the same ears that I have, and what you hear as being better may be different than what I prefer and what I'm explaining to you here in this video. So definitely do your own research, and if you have other examples of transparent boosts or more colorful boosts or other treble boosters that you think are really great and that people should check out, please do put those in the comments. I'd love to create a list of maybe what some of these pedals are so we can start to categorize them and maybe have that as a resource for people watching this video so that they can reference it in the description and kind of see where maybe different boosts fall in terms of the spectrum of different styles of boosts that are out there. And if you like this video, I highly recommend you give us a thumbs up. You, again, leave us a comment. Tell us about one of your favorite parts or some other boost pedals that we didn't mention that might be worthy of a video like this in the future. And if you want to support us, you can always go over to the Vertex Effects website. You can purchase a pedal for one of our authorized dealers, or if you want a free way to support us, you can head over to our podcast, which is on Spotify, Apple, all the common places where you can get podcasts. And you can listen to our Chairman of the Boards podcast, where I get together with Brian O'Million and Grant Klassen from Goodwood and O'Million Audio. We have a roundtable discussion every week about pedal boards and gear and best practices. Also, if you want to get some of the stuff that you saw today in terms of my instrument cables or in terms of the interconnections and all the beautiful cable ties that are on the pedal board that we use today, those are all available from therigdr.com and has all that stuff available there for you to purchase. Until next time, I'm Mason Marangella from Vertex Effects, aka The Rig Doctor, and that was our video on different boost types, where to put them, how to use them to most efficiently maximize your pedal board. See you later.